that would have been like a $10,000 mod. And now with modern architecture like NetSuite and Acumatica, those are just normal events today.
Welcome to ERP on Tap, your steady flow of everything you want to know about NetSuite and Acumatica. The podcast where we dive into practical tips, expert insights, and real-world examples, exploring the tools, tips, and tricks you need to make your business processes flow like never before.
Hey everybody, I'm Jonathan McKee.
And I'm Iker Harrison.
Hey, and this week we have got a treat because we've got an inside peek as to why, of all the ERP possibilities out there, why Pratello's leadership chose to consult on NetSuite and Acumatica. And honestly, if you find value in what you hear today, help us help you. Take a second to click that like and subscribe button so you can be the first to glean new content as it's released.
Yeah, I'm really excited about our guest too, because trying to get a meeting with him is extremely difficult. He's one of the most difficult. Well, the only way I can talk to him is if we record a podcast, right?
Oh, that's great. That's great. Oh, well, no, we won't tell him you said that, but that's great. Yeah, no, okay, let's be honest. Tom works with us all the time. He's the president. Yeah. I love the fact that he makes himself available, and this is going to be really fun because, I mean, come on. I mean, this is an important choice he made, which softwares we're going to consult on, and these types of important choices. Mm-hmm. I like to know, I mean, honestly, why? I mean, why these? There's lots of choices out there.
Yeah, because you can pick just about anything. And he ended up picking Acumatica and NetSuite. And I know we were talking about just like our own kind of choices. And right now we're looking at RVs. And I just recently found out, Jonathan, you're looking at RVs. So we'll have to talk about that. But that's a big decision. That's a big thing that you're going to have to decide.
RVs ain't cheap. Are you? I didn't even know that. Are you looking at the drive kind or the pull? Like you're going to pull one?
The drive kind. I mean, can you just imagine me one? Like
that's going to be so cool. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
We'll have to talk after.
Yeah.
Maybe our next podcast.
I mean, think about that. Whenever you're making a huge choice like this, I mean, it's not like just going out, and buying, something like,
something small.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many little things that we do each day. They're $10, $20 choices. So that's cool. I'm glad to hear that you are shopping for RVs. Definitely have to talk about that. That's fun stuff.
Definitely.
Well, some of us, we've embarked on various courting relationships as sorts as, we are deciding which software is right for us. And the thing I like about our guest today is he's going to provide us not only with an insightful peek into his journey evaluating which ERP systems were right for the company, but, he was also choosing what's right for his customers. So this is an important thing. So with over 35 years in experience in supply chain management and enterprise software consulting, Tom Victor brings a wealth of knowledge and leadership to the world of ERP. As president of Pratello, he has hands-on experience leading complex cloud-based implementations across top-tier ERP platforms in industries like pharmaceuticals, food distribution, manufacturing, e-commerce, and much, much more. So today, Tom joins us to share why out of all the ERP systems out there on the market, Acumatica and NetSuite rose to the top, and what makes them the right choice for growing businesses. Tom, welcome to ERP on Tap.
Hello. Nice to have you here.
We feel privileged to have some time with you today. Tell us a little bit about your background in ERP.
Probably it was in the mid 80s that I actually started in material management for the United States Air Force as a civilian. I wasn't enlisted or as an officer, but that way I managed a lot of, parts and pieces and logistics and repairs for aircraft. And that led me into computer systems where I, started to learn how, these big back then there was not a lot of integration and such, they were a lot of standalone systems. So I had, participated in a lot of the contractors that work with the government to bring on systems and even manage some communication systems throughout the world. And from there, I spent about 13 years or so there, and then moved into the private industry. In there, I worked for a co-op, a food service co-op, one of the nation's largest at the time. and I helped them implement a new system, an ERP system. Back then it was called JBA, which is an older system that probably nobody knows.
I don't know
It's
what it is.
probably part of the Infor or Stack or something like
Okay.
that,
Okay.
retired system.
Yeah.
But we put that in to run the distribution system, and from there I had lots of years of experience on the receiving side of software. I said I'm going to make the move on to the giving side of software. And throughout that time, I learned a lot of the mistakes that people had made with me as a user or as an implementer from the receiving side of the software. And I applied those in my career to promise myself that I would always take care of the customers that I served in a way that I wanted to be served. And that's how I lived through my career. So that led me to an ERP software company called IBS at the time, International Business Systems, now IPTOR. And I spent like another 13 years there, doing project management, being a senior application specialist, somewhat of a firefighter in my consulting career, getting put in the worst conditions possible. So I have tons of exposure and know how it feels to be a consultant and a user. And it led me into industries like food service and pharmaceutical, getting a lot of the life sciences requirements. And from there, that business had changed. It reorganized, and I came here to Protello back in 2010, where I was, essentially doing project management and eventually the manager of the professional services. And then from there, I went on into sales and marketing as the leader there, and COO, and now president. So that's my story.
That is amazing. Tom, like just hearing your experience and just talking through all the different roles that you have, it totally makes sense when I talk to you now because as a consultant, I like to break down problems too. And I just kind of talking through some of the processes and stuff, like, keeping it simple. And now it all makes sense as to where that thought process and just, having to talk to different people and just breaking it down into that simple what is the issue, core aspect of it. And now I get where it comes from. And I love
Yeah,
it helps me so much. So I just enjoy talking to you and just hearing that all of that information.
Well, I love to
yeah,
hear. I love to hear the industry experience. I mean, from way back in the day, getting. I love how you said basically that you were throwing some of the biggest complex problems, and your job was to figure those things out. And that seems like to
yeah,
develop you to where you are today, and the importance of having the right system to do that. So that's a good segue to you kind of went the direction of cloud systems. There's a lot of people who started like you in on-premise systems, legacy systems, as you talk about. Many of those are even retired. A lot of systems are switching to cloud. Some started in the cloud. What made you go the direction of a cloud system?
yeah. Well, that system that we were talked about, where I was, having a firefight and all, it was a lot more difficult back then. Say that was in the
Mhm.
mid '90s, um, and in fact, I had forgotten to mention that, I went to college and got a master's degree in industrial distribution and technology. So between all of that and then being able to have the real world experience, I kind of it was informative as from a technology point of view and an actual practical point of view. So we knew that there's things on the cusp of, the cloud was starting to become popular back in, it started, NetSuite started back in 1998 and then Acumatica in 2008. So technology has, had evolved. It moved from being on premise where you had a lot of hardware on premise, and it got moved in. It was starting to move in the cloud. When we did this back in 2011 and 12, NetSuite wasn't even very popular. It was growing in popularity, but cloud was, you'd still have to justify it. But the reality of it is people learned that I can have basically $1 million system in that disaster recovery and backups and redundancies and mirroring and all the great aspects of having something in the cloud, like we're accustomed to today, there and instead of on premise where you're having to maintain it, keep it up to date, having to maintain all the software upgrades. When things break, you're responsible for it and all of those things. So we knew we needed to take the technology from a legacy based on-premise system and make it go into the cloud. And in the cloud, you got security. So you got security because it's just like it's very similar to doing online banking. You don't have the risk of floods, or disaster zones. You can work remotely. Those are all the things that we're seeing today that we had saw back then when we made that decision.
Yeah. Is that, you say security? It seems like years ago, people were more skeptical, like of the cloud. Where now, I think people know because
Everybody's cloud
yeah,
now.
their
Like,
banking's on the cloud, and even people who have on-premise systems. I mean, and they might
it's
talk about, well, I
weird
want the
now.
security. It's backed up to the cloud.
Yeah.
So what was it like, over a decade ago when you were, starting with Portello, you were choosing cloud? Was that kind of a constant barrier or an education that you had to give people about the safety there and some of these benefits?
Yeah, the biggest concern people had was about their data. How do
Mm-hmm.
I get access to my data? Or what happens if I don't have an internet connection? Those were
Mm-hmm.
two of the biggest things. And then making sure, see, in a system, your data becomes one of your most important, assets. It is what, largely makes up the system. And if you put that outside the control of your own premise, your own four walls, it was kind of uncomfortable for people because they really didn't understand
Sure.
that the concept of the cloud as much. So you had to justify largely that. And then also a shift from owning the software to a SaaS based subscription,
Yeah.
software as a service subscription model. So those were the two biggest things that
So
we
what
had.
made you what made you decide to go with NetSuite? Just based off the past experience and things like that, why NetSuite?
Well, we looked at, SAP, Oracle at the time. They didn't own NetSuite
Mm-mm.
at that time. We looked at, Microsoft. We looked at all the major players, at the time back in 2011 timeframe.
Mm-hmm.
And none of them were built from the beginning in the cloud. Where in
Mm-hmm.
1998, NetSuite was formed just for that purpose, which meant that the technology and the architecture had by then already evolved 13
Mm-hmm.
years or so.
Mhm.
So, and it was at the time, the leading cloud ERP system. It just didn't have
Mm-hmm.
the acceptance of the cloud, and that resistance of the cloud back then was the biggest thing. But we knew the technology, the architecture, the things that it could provide, because it's scalable in nature. You can start small and grow big. It was a single platform. So you had, the CRM, the ERP, the e-commerce all in one. And that was hard to find at the time as well, because you had all these islands of these different segmented systems like I
Silos.
was talking
Yeah.
about from my days with the Air Force. It was still somewhat like that because you had on premise, things weren't talking to each other. APIs weren't as popular as they are now.
Mm-hmm.
There's like the whole infrastructure, and having the ability to, much like your iPhone, have an app built in the platform and
Mhm.
having the ability to customize a system would be like a huge effort with a legacy based system. So, for
Sure.
instance, if I needed to add a customer field and have that field have a table behind it driven where I could select a particular item, or a selection like a color, red or whatever, and then I wanted to default that or something into the sales order and then have that go to the fulfillment and then through to the invoice, that would have been like a $10,000 mod. And now with modern architecture like NetSuite and Acumatica, those are just normal events today, and they're very cheap. And
In
in NetSuite,
comparison.
it would take 30 minutes or less to do that whole thing, and it would be visible on all the reporting. Back then, you would
Yeah.
have to write special code and all that's gone because of the cloud and NetSuite, for instance. The other thing is, like, when we did that, people got worried because they thought, oh, well, now I have
Worry
to,
about.
I don't want to customize the system because now when I upgrade those customizations, I'll have to redo them all. Well, no longer. When we saw this in the beginning, we thought, no way, coming from a legacy based system. But now, here, having over 500 customers using
Mhm.
NetSuite and Protello and 41,000 throughout the world, they get upgraded twice a year, and that's seamless. All 500 of our customers get seamless integration twice a year
Mhm.
with all the upgrades, so they're always current.
That was one of those things that I've heard. At Portello, we obviously have team members that have come from different systems and stuff like that. That seems like one of those huge differentiators. It seems like one of those things where some of those other systems out there, especially the ones that were an on-premise system that they're tweaking to try to become a cloud system, it seems like some can be pretty powerful and stuff, but come upgrade time, also it's
Mhm.
like you get your system all tweaked to perfection, and come upgrade time, that's when the nightmare stories came of, oh man, we didn't even want to upgrade because we knew when we did it was going to be so much money, so much work, so much time. Were you skeptical? You mentioned something right there. You said you kind of almost didn't believe it at first. Was there some skepticism with the new people coming into NetSuite as you're training people on NetSuite as to, no, truly, this stuff all upgrades? What was that like? I'm kind of curious. Give us a peek into that.
It was a paradigm shift because, people had, and we've seen it ease over the years.
Mhm.
They've accepted it, that yes, this is possible, and truly it is seamless. Um, yeah. So there was, some skepticism, but once you and then trying to explain this to a prospective, buyer was
Mhm.
kind of difficult because it becomes a technical issue versus a business process issue is easily explained and relatable.
Mhm.
So that architecture, I'm not the right guy to be talking about that part of it, but all I know is if I'm able to do it, I could train someone in 5 minutes, or our team can train
Mhm.
someone in 5 minutes to do whatever I need to do to customize and make the system work. Yeah,
It's cool.
Yeah,
that's
so
not
it's nice,
everything. Just to be clear, I don't
of
want to
course.
mislead anybody. There's still a level of customization with scripting,
Mhm.
that is feasible and possible under certain circumstances. But the ease of adding fields, changing forms around, creating reports, all of that is just configurable these days and personalized. Sorry,
Yeah,
Ikra.
it seems no, it's okay. So it's just kind of what I'm hearing. It's just like, it was kind of a little bit, you know, maybe kludgy in the beginning, but it's definitely smoothed out over the years and just gotten easier. And I feel like that just speaks to like the infrastructure, like you were saying, where it's like adaptable. All these things are changing. And it just those being built on the cloud, it just makes it easier for those changes to be part of the system versus trying to MacGyver it almost, right? Trying to make it fit. So that actually takes us to the next one. So why did you choose Acumatica? And obviously, it's only one right answer, Tom.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just
Well,
kidding.
first of all, it, it was pretty good. Uh, So when you're in a sales cycle and you find yourself going up against competitors, you kind of find out which ones are strong and which ones aren't.
Yeah.
So when you're constantly beating someone and then you start to lose in particular areas or industries, then you
Yeah.
know you have
Yeah.
a strong solution, right? So so we pick Acumatica honestly because there's, you know, especially in the construction space, it's a great fit for a lot of the leads we were getting that
Yeah.
for construction based
Yeah.
companies. And in there, we saw that, you know, they needed, you know, more flexible pricing. Instead of user-based pricing, they have, you know, unlimited user pricing.
Yeah.
And things like that that were attractive, you know, to them. Because if you start adding up, you have, you know, 50 or 100 users, that becomes a lot in a in
Mm-hmm.
license-based model. Whereas in an unlimited user model, which is more driven off of commercial transaction volume, meaning documents being processed,
Mm-hmm.
it's it becomes a much better proposition. And the depth in which the functionality was built out in Acumatica was very apparent. It was geared towards things like
Mm-hmm.
you know, specialized billings and all the project costing and accounting, you know,
Yeah.
all of those things that were specialized, and then even the types of invoicing that was necessary for the industry. And it was a growing software. We knew
Mm-hmm.
that ERP was an up and comer,
Yeah.
and it was evolving, and we wanted to be part of that movement. And we really enjoyed the type of partnership that they offered, and the way that it's a model where the partners are selling it, you know, solely at this time,
Yeah.
and that made it even more attractive for us. But
Yeah.
the system is very solid. It's very, you know, it's a cloud-based system as well, very reputable, and the customers that are using it are very, very happy.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and Ikra, it's funny being on kind of the front lines of talking to the customers when they come in, and us being consultants of several softwares. It was funny before we sold Acumatica. It's like we always NetSuite was very strong when we talked manufacturing, distributing, but whenever we had somebody that was, especially in like that construction, one
Yep.
of those industries where Acumatica has it built out and they've got a built out well, we were getting beat every time.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I've been an end user, like a project accountant, and I've seen it firsthand how it can help, like contractors and subcontractors. Just
yeah,
doing it myself, and just like, honestly, that's just one of my
yeah,
biggest like
how powerful it is.
relatable conversations I
Yeah,
have with some of the clients that we have. I was like, I've been there. I was like, this made my life so much easier by being able to adapt to this
yeah.
software, and so
No,
it's really
no,
nice
right.
when people really do, you know, um, take advantage of all of those different features and stuff like
Sure,
that. So,
sure. Well, and it was nice on our end, Tom, when you made that decision for us to have Acumatica as well. It's nice because when people come to us, sometimes the needs are different. If you've got someone with
mhm.
low transactions but high users, Acumatica can be a really good
Yeah,
fit. Where in other situations where we've seen NetSuite be a really good fit. It's nice for people to have options. That's
Yeah,
really cool.
yeah.
just
I'm
need
glad
people to
I'm glad
shake
you got it.
things up at NetSuite.
You know, and what's funny is we
Sorry,
thought that,
Dr. Tello.
yeah, what's funny is we thought that, you know, construction was going to be, you know, our first customers and all. And in fact, we're finding that we're getting manufacturers and distributors signing up with us. So it's even a bonus. So now we have a good offering, you know, for our core customers. At Protello, we basically service, you know, manufacturers, distributors, construction-based companies, and service-based
Hmm.
companies, project-based companies.
Yeah,
Those are our, you know, go to, and we hire the best people in the industry to service us, you know, because again, my background would tell me I don't want to have people that really are just mediocre. I want the best to serve us
Oh,
because our bar for quality and service is very high. And I think, you know, you guys can understand based upon my background how important that would be for me and the owner of our company, Krister.
yeah,
high
yeah,
five,
yeah,
Jonathan.
sure. well, Tom, another thing I've always seen out of you is you always seem to have, kind of your thumb on the pulse of the direction where things are going. And obviously, nobody has a crystal ball. But let me ask you, as someone who's kind of keeping an eye on where things are going, wh- what does your crystal ball reveal for the ERPs like this in the next 5 to 10 years? Um, Tell me what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. Well, it's a kind of exciting, point in our lives. The whole landscape of AI is changing the ERP world and many other things around us. Gone are the days of, just searching through Google and trying to find and clicking. There's no click searches because the AI is bringing back all the information you would need just on a typical search, which makes it a little difficult on us, because it's harder for, unless you have the highest organic search, getting to the top. Well, now you take the concept of, rewriting AI, which are tools that are being built into the rewriting your words, improve this, and you can type in your thoughts and it can write you a great message. Well, a lot of that's built into the functions inside the ERP now, so that you can, write a message or an email. And systems like, ERPs like NetSuite and Acumatica, they're consistently investing time and energy in building out things, not only for rewriting things or, writing a note or a follow-up or chasing after someone for a sales deal or an opportunity, or just following up with an invoice. Those types of things can be pre-written for you. The other thing that's happening there is, basically predictive analytics, like dashboards now that are identifying things that, without having all the skills and the access to the security of the system to be able to draw out data and link it and all that AI is doing that for you and suggesting things now that you would otherwise not even know about. For instance, it can tell you that you're, missing orders this week or things like that, and it's just going to grow in complexity, almost to the point where now you'll know, that when you're purchasing an item that you've had a dip in demand, and it can recognize that and normalize it. There's going to be all kinds of things like that coming out. And then just the way that systems talk and machines talk to each other, the machine learning from the software perspective, but not only that, the hardware perspective. For instance, having the uh, uh, sensors, actually feeding real-time data and updating will become more popular, I believe, in the future. So those are the things I think. The connectivity between systems has always been, an important part. I think the ease of all of that is going to be a lot better moving forward into the future.
And Tom, thanks so much for giving us access to you today and giving us this peek into the why behind these important decisions for Patello. And listeners, what about you? What ERP systems have you found value in or honestly struggled with? Jump into the comments below, chime in. We'd love to hear from you. And if you found this helpful, take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button so we can continue to bring you a steady flow of free content about all things NetSuite and Acumatica. Tom, we really appreciate your time
Yeah,
today.
thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate you guys as well. And thank you for everything you do to help our company.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it. And listeners, we appreciate you. I'm Jonathan McKee.
And I'm Micra Harrison.
And this has been another episode of ERP on Tap.